Good morning, everybody. We have a very special guest today. Keng. Did I pronounce your name right? Baba
Yep.
SHILL. Welcome to the channel, buddy. So I've seen this guy on YouTube, right? And he talks about this horrible Chinese stock that is eventually going to go to zero. And I had to confront this young man who thinks it's a good idea to put any amount of money in a Chinese stock because they're just trash, right? So please explain yourself. Well, first of all, explain who you are, and then I want to know why you're actually pumping this garbage onto the YouTube airwaves.
Right. Thanks, Chris, for having me on the channel. So my name is Keng. I'm the self-proclaimed number one Babashio over here. So I think I've been talking about the stock for close to 18 months now, close to 2 years actually. I think I started my channel back in April of 2021. But I entered into Alibaba, like my first ever position was at the end around December of 2020. So I've been with the stock for quite a decent amount of time. So I think I kind of know a thing or two about the company. But that said, I think it's not a very good idea to have been dollar cost averaging into the company for 2 years now. I think it has been abysmal. My results were bad. I mean, in hindsight, of course, we know that things haven't been playing out. But yeah, I think I enjoyed. I still see great value. I'm still back holding. I have a relatively huge position. Like Alibaba is a huge percentage of my portfolio. I think around 50 to 60%. And a lot of people like to claim that I'm part of the CCP or I'm paid for pumping stocks like particularly Chinese stocks. So Alibaba is not the only Chinese stocks that I own. Initially, I think at the start there were a lot of such comments, but I think those people kind of got tired of this whole discussion and then they stopped talking about it. But yeah, I'll be happy if the CCP wants to contact me though. My email is on my YouTube description.
It's hilarious you say that. People accuse me of being a communist all the time too.
Right.
I'm like, no, I see a company that I think is undervalued and I think I could potentially make a lot of money on. They're like, oh,
Right.
you're definitely paid by the Communist Party. It's like,
right.
I mean, like, you get a bunch of nut jobs on YouTube. I mean, you've been on here long enough where you probably experienced a lot of the loonies on here. So like what inspires you to make a YouTube channel? Were you just bored or what?
I think when I first started, so just a little bit background context, I'm actually from Singapore. If you haven't heard my accent, it's a little bit different. Like I don't come from like the western part of the world. So I've been interested in investing for a very long time. So I've been invested in my local markets for at least a good 4 or 5 years now. So I'm from Singapore. So I've been investing in the Singapore market. Then when COVID struck, like back in 2020, then that was when I started pivoting over to see where other opportunities there are. So from that perspective, I started consuming a lot of like online content. Last time it was still your good old television, and that's where you get all your stock picks, right? You look at analysts from this bank, that bank, and they start shilling other stocks. So that was the traditional media. And then when you pivot over, because like, yeah, if you haven't tell, I'm actually quite young. So I've been consuming a lot of content like on Reddit, on YouTube. And I was just thinking, hey, why is there such an over-representation? Like there are a lot of US, a lot of UK, a lot of Australian creators. While on this side of the globe, so you talk about people in Singapore, in Malaysia, etc. There really is an underrepresentation. So from that perspective, I was just thinking, hey, rather than just complain, why Asians are underrepresented, then why not I just take out my iPhone and start filming a video? And I started posted since then. So the first video that really kind of like quote unquote gain more traction, because I if you actually, if you don't know, I have zero social media presence. So even on my Instagram and other social media platforms, I have literally only close friends following me. So when I started out, I built from zero following, and the first video that kind of gained traction was when Charlie Munger bought into Alibaba as well. So I was a little bit happy, not gonna lie. So I bought into Alibaba earlier than him, and in Q1 of 2021, he bought into Alibaba as well. So then that was the first video that catalyzed the whole, I guess, viewership, because I think that video got around, I've forgotten, was it a few thousand views? And that was crazy, by the way. I had 0 subscribers. So that was essentially my how I started off this entire YouTube thing.
So like, was that one of your first videos and it just popped off?
That was my first. That was actually, I think, my second or my third video.
Woo! Yeah. I'm jealous, man. You know how many videos I made and I got like 10 views?
Oh, before you blew up, is it?
Yeah, I don't even consider myself blown up at this point, but yeah, it took me a long time to even break like 100 views.
Right. I think when you are riding on certain topics, I think that time when manga actually bought into Alibaba was really a pretty huge deal. So everybody was saying that China is pretty crazy, it's uninvestable, and then you have this a goat investing goat that bought into Alibaba that kind of gained quite a lot of traction, I guess. So it was a little bit of like luck and timing. Yeah.
And skill, of course.
I wouldn't dare claim that I have skill, but
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting comment you made about like underrepresentation from people, from like Singapore. It's funny because I guess it obviously depends on where you live. I only see content creators that speak English and that cover, mostly US, Canadian stocks because that's the language that I speak, et cetera, et cetera. Have you tried to look around for other creators from like Singapore or like how do you know there's actually underrepresentation?
right. So I actually did. So I think specifically for Singapore, it has been a growing community. There are more and more people stepping up. But I think the bigger ones, they are really just that few people. So I don't know whether you know them. I think there is one from Singapore called Adam Khoo. So he's one of those, like, I think he trades and he invests as well. And for the rest of them, I think we are all still relatively small. And the biggest barrier that I realize for people on this part of the globe is probably the accent and the way we speak. So it's a little bit different in like people. I wouldn't call it racism per se. It's not racism. It's just people being uncomfortable in how you sound, certain words being pronounced differently, and people don't really understand because I also tend to speak quite fast. So I'm intentionally trying to slow down my speech, but people on this side of the globe, we speak a little bit faster, and people think that, they might be uncomfortable with how we portray or how we speak in this case. And that has probably been why it kind of hindered growth in this part of the globe, because if you don't understand them and if they're speaking too fast, then yeah, you get a confluence of those different factors.
I actually agree to a certain extent because, like, I mean, your accent doesn't bother me, but there's some people like they have an
Yeah,
accent and it's so bad. It's like, oh,
right,
I can't even watch this. So, I mean, I could totally see how it could, impact your viewership.
right.
So, like, I mean, have you ever been to China? Like, do you have a decent understanding of the culture there?
Right. So, culture-wise, I think Singapore has been largely. I mean, in our country, it's largely ethnically Chinese. So I think it's 80 or 90% we are all Chinese. But there's still a lot of nuance and a lot of differences because the China Chinese is a lot more, I would say, traditional. And then all of us, the rest of us that actually exited China, there is a certain level of dilution. That's one. And number two, we kind of developed our own level of differences and nuances over the years, like over the last few decades when we leave China. So my grandparents were from China, but they're in Singapore now. And I've visited because I still have relatives back in China. So I think in this lifetime, I've been back for around 3 times, two or 3 times. But my only living memory was once where I went back to travel. The other 2 times I was too small, so I didn't know what was going on. So my parents were just leading me on, and I just went along with the flow. So
You
that's how I understand.
you got to go again, man, because you can go visit Alibaba's headquarters.
I would, but I think that's why the issue is really the whole lockdown thing, and for at least for the last 2 years, there are many concerns, not only on quarantine rules. There is a lot of people getting very tensed up because if you screw up one of the there are multiple layers, by the way, before this whole relaxation, right? Once you screw up in one part of the process, your whole itinerary has to change. So that was
Yeah.
how serious and how complicated the entire process was. So that was also one of the pull factors that prevented me from going to China, because I think it would actually make great content. So there's pretty much quite underrepresented on YouTube, because I mean it's banned in China, but you can still VPN out. But to really understand like things going down like on the ground level, whatever that's happening in reality, I think sometimes it's a little bit distorted, at least on the media space. So I would love to go down and see, but yeah, I mean I'm hopeful like in 2023, see whether if there's an opportunity, but yeah.
Yeah, that's actually funny you say that because like the main content I see out of China is like there's like a couple Westerners like Lao Wai. There's like a couple dudes, that would drive around China and like film the ghost cities and stuff. But I don't really see any like actual Chinese, content creators. Maybe I'm not looking for it. But yeah, it's mostly Westerners that I see driving around, which is pretty hilarious. But I do have a big question about like understanding the Chinese culture when it comes to investing in stocks versus real estate. Because what I hear all the time is that, Chinese people, they don't like stocks, they don't trust stocks, but they love real estate. Could you kind of like flesh that out?
I think to a large extent it's true. From my own perspective, so I don't represent the Chinese people, so I'm just one out of the billions out there. But from my own understanding, at least in Singapore, we actually share very similar similar philosophy in terms of investing or in terms of allocating capital. So let me just give you an example. So Singapore is one of the highest home ownership in the entire world. So most of the married couples actually do own a flat under their name. And this is whether is it by policy, by is it just by culture? I don't know, but I can tell you that it's kind of ingrained in many of these mentalities of the more traditional Chinese, saying that, hey, if you have a property, it's hard and fast. You can touch the property, and you know that the property won't just go missing, and the value won't just drop like 50%, like Tesla or Alibaba per se. So that's one of the concern. And I think on the second part, if I were to speculate, it's really this idea of the maturity of the markets. So specifically in China, I think the markets, at least if you use the efficient market hypothesis, it's not efficient. So many of these companies listed in the Chinese stock market, they're also probably state-owned. And that's one. And number two is, I think the investor capital in terms of fund flow, it's not efficient enough. So people are not making enough prices, and the buy and sell and the, how do I put it, the liquidity is not unlocked to a larger extent. So in this case, people don't trust the Chinese stock market. So in this case, where do they put their money in? Okay, let's buy a property. And when my kid is gonna get married, okay, let's give the married couple a property. So property investing has been a huge topic and has been of a huge priority for many of these people, which ultimately led to this real estate bust that we are currently experiencing. And there is a huge amount of unraveling that needs to be done because for all I understand, a lot of these new married couples that got their property, it's largely subsidized by their parents. So it's not even, so that's why you see sky high valuations and you see sky high real estate prices, saying that it's 30, 40 years in order for people to pay down their property. And who is essentially bidding the prices up? It's supported by their relatives, supported by their parents, supported by, I don't know, God knows where they got their money from. And then the wages are not kept in line. That's why there is this whole problem of the real estate collapse today.
I mean, so, do you think that this real estate collapse will change some people's attitudes about investing in stocks? Because, it's like, oh, well, stocks could drop, so why would I buy those? Well, if a lot of people buy, a bunch of properties, or buy a property, then that property's value drops massively. Do you think that would somehow impact their, thought process on investing in stocks? Or is it still kind of like, well, I still own the property regardless, so it doesn't matter?
Personally, I think no. It's a mentality shift that it takes a lot. At least if you are hoping or you're punting for such a shift, I don't think it's gonna come anytime soon. So why I make such an assessment? So I don't know whether, so Hong Kong is part of China, right? But it's a special administrative region. So Hong Kong's property prices has been sky high, and it has been a very pressing issue for many of their youngsters for a very long time. And the Chinese people in mainland, when they look at Hong Kong, they know that they essentially screwed up. So it was essentially a bunch of tycoons that bought up like apartments after apartments and buildings after buildings. And Hong Kong is a relatively small space. So when you allow these tycoons to monopolize these areas, it gets very hard. And you can look at a lot of documentaries by Wire, by Vice. They talk about how bad the property issue is in Hong Kong. But China still stepped into the same issue, and now they're trying to unravel the process. So I feel like at least it requires a lot of factors to come together in order for them to have that shift in mindset. So like one main issue is at least the stock market needs to be a lot more matured. For now, if like let's say why not they can shift their money out and invest in the US. I think capital control is still a very huge thing in China. So they can't really move their money so easily and say that let's buy the VO or Vanguard or VT in this case. But that said, I think property still remains a very important investment vehicle for now. And if we are looking at a transition. I don't think the transition is going to come too early, but it's a little bit out of my depth. This is just my own observation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need like a political science assessment of everything in China. I'm just because it's kind of interesting to talk to somebody that's actually. I mean, you're not in China, but you're from that part, that part of the world. You have some ties to China, so it's very interesting to hear your perspective on that whole thing.
Right.
So, are you cool about talking about the Chinese government at all? Would that concern you?
Sure. I think I've been talking about them on my own YouTube channel, so it's fine. I mean, the most they do is just blacklist me, or I hope that I can still make other YouTube videos and I won't go missing. I mean, that's my own.
Yeah, you just disappear after this interview.
Right.
Yeah, I had to ask. But so when it comes to the Chinese government, are you concerned that they're going to destroy every single publicly traded company and just seize all their assets and just basically generate a terrible business environment in China? Like, what are your thoughts about this whole panic about the Chinese government?
I'm not, so that's why I'm invested in many of these tech companies. But I do have several concerns on how it's going to impact like bottom line. So in this case, I think I share similar sentiments. I do watch some of your defending your arguments, trying to defend your Alibaba investment, right?
Shilling.
So right. So I think from that perspective, if you were to really break down the idea, right, it's true that if China wants to be a global superpower, it needs representation in the business space. Like you need strong companies, you need companies that have global reach, and you need companies that are reputable, that are able to draw talents from all over the world as well. So that's one part. But I think I'm quite confident that they're not going to destroy them. So people will keep bringing in examples like, oh, what about the ad tech crackdown, and look at what happened to all the education companies. I think at the end of the day, there are a lot of nuances in terms of these crackdowns. You can't just put a blanket statement and say that, oh, it's all the same. They're all going to die because they're at odds with the government. I personally have a different assessment, but I think my bigger concern in this equation is really how it's going to impact bottom line. So people have been hinting that, oh, what about a consistent or perpetual donation? So I don't know whether you saw this news. I think it was a few quarters back saying that Alibaba and Tencent both pledged like $15 billion for certain environmental upgrades or to upskill the workers. So I think the bigger concern now is how these profitability metrics is going to be affected when they are constantly being quote unquote taxed in a unconventional way, if I can put it that way. Yeah, that's my bigger concern. But like I said, it's probably a symbiotic relationship in a way where the government needs the company needs the government. So as long as they can kind of find a harmonious way to kind of coexist, and they need to find a harmonious way to coexist, I don't see a very huge issue. And of course, if you buy at a relatively cheap valuation, like say 10 times PE or less than 10 times, and like, I don't know, 15 times price to free cash flow, I don't think you're going to be very down, or I don't think you'll do very badly on the investment in a very long time horizon. But of course, in the short term, there'll be huge amount of volatility because the media will stir this, and then tomorrow US are going to ban something, and then the next day, the funny thing is, I think on this media front, I wanted to comment a little bit because when China was in lockdown, the media is going to say that the China economic collapse because everything is on a standstill, supply chain is going to be destroyed. And when China is opening now, they're saying that China is gonna get destroyed because nobody is gonna go out, and the hospital is gonna the whole how do I put it? The whole medical system is gonna collapse. So regardless of what China does, there is always a narrative, and there's always something that people will say that China is gonna collapse. So I think you just have to get comfortable with investing in this place and how they're gonna spin things around. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, because like what I always say on my channel, it's like, yeah, I mean, China's the rising superpower that's going to compete with the United States. So I mean, at least from a Western perspective, China's kind of like the boogeyman. It's the bad guy, and basically everything they do is bad and evil and concocted. And you can kind of see this play out on YouTube because there's huge channels on here that have like millions of subscribers and they get millions of views. And they're talking about the doom of China in every single video. Oh, there's going to be a drought. China's going to collapse because of a drought and this and that. And it's like, at some point, you got to be like, yeah, there's a grain of truth to everything that people are talking about, but there also has to be a ton of, bias and propaganda with what some of these people are saying. So
totally agreed. I mean, there is always a certain element of truth. I think it's really dependent on how things play out, and we really can't say for certainty, right? There is nothing in life that is, especially in investing. So if they're gonna keep extrapolating, and I mean, of course, China is not the perfect country. There's no country that is perfect. Every country's faced and dealt with a deck of cards that is stacked against them. So it really is dependent on the wisdom of the people in governance and how they're gonna steer the ship. So if we're just gonna keep touting and say that, oh, the US has a huge amount of debt, Japan has a huge declining population and an aging population, China has a economic collapse and a population a crisis, that, yeah, sure, I mean, every country has a problem, and so what, we have to put our money somewhere, and we have to back good companies that are gonna give us our return, right? If not, let's all not put not if you're really so afraid, then you shouldn't even be putting your money in the treasuries, because you're scared that the US government will default, right? I mean, then where are we going to proceed from here? You get what I mean?
So buy gold, man. Buy gold and silver. Maybe some Bitcoin too.
Right. If that works, I mean, if that's your way, then so be it. I'm not against people that are long go or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of craziness going on, but at the end of the day, like, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think, you know, at least if you keep a small position. I'm not a huge fan of like your concentration, but that's right. Okay. You know, we all have different investing philosophies, but like, you know, if you have a small position in a couple Chinese stocks, okay, you know, maybe you'll lose it all. Maybe it'll stay low forever. Maybe China will collapse, but you could also potentially make a lot of money. I mean, I remember looking at the like when Baba fell down to like in the 60s, I think, or even lower.
50s.
Like, oh my
I think
God.
the lowest was, 50
yeah,
or something.
It was crazy. And then I looked at the like price to books. It was almost trading at book value. Right. This massively profitable, well, I mean, not recently, but this massively profitable cash burning generating machine is trading almost at book value. I mean, I think everybody knows the company is massively undervalued. I mean, I don't think anybody can argue that. It's all about the political dynamics. And like you said, you just have to wait and be patient and, you know, be able to stomach the gyrations. Because I've noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed, like every time Baba goes down, it's trash. You know, people come and make fun of you, or at least they make fun of me. But then when it shoots back up, they don't say anything. You know, they're completely quiet. So
I guess it's normal human nature. It's the same. I think not trying to throw shade on other people as well. So I've been in this stock for very long, and at the starting part when it was collapsing down from like the high 100s to all the way down to under 100, that was the most tenacious part or the most arduous part of the journey. So the comments come in one after the other, and because Alibaba was essentially free falling, my viewership also kind of go up because people are thinking, hey, what's happening? Is it a good buy and whatever? But that is also when the equivalent like negativity comes around. But I think when Alibaba actually trades below 100, it gets better because people just loses hope. Oh, it's the same. It's Alibaba doing Alibaba things, and there's nothing much to concern about. But the funny thing is, if you were to chart back up from 58, or let's just not talk about Alibaba, the whole Chinese tech or many of these Chinese stocks, they actually bounce up by quite a large leg up in the last few months. And nobody's talking about it. Like, nobody wants to say that Alibaba on a year-to-date basis actually outperformed popular stocks like Tesla, Palantir, and whatever, like those popular YouTube stocks. And that was all the other popular YouTubers are talking about in 2021. So they were just pulling out Alibaba's chart and say that, hey, look at what Tesla is doing and look at what Alibaba is doing. And then when this year they underperform, nobody says a thing. Like, everybody keeps quiet. China is still communist country. They didn't change and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it just goes under the radar. I don't know why, but yeah.
I can guarantee you, if Baba actually goes on a massive bull run, people will start talking about it again. And they'll pretend that they were bullish on it all along. I mean, oh, yeah, of course, you know, it was so undervalued. Or you would be stupid not to buy it back then. Right. They're the same freaking people that were probably posting comments and under your videos. Oh, you're so stupid. You're so dumb. Why would you buy a stock that's profitable that went down massively? It doesn't make sense.
Right. I think it's a cycle that we have to be in, and I think it wouldn't be the first time. So this time around, it's just that because it's Chinese stock, so the political sprinkle, and you just sprinkle a little bit of pepper and salt on it, then this is the new thing. And when other stocks starts collapsing again, then everybody will find different reasons to try to fit into the narrative that they think it's why things are playing out this way. But I guess it's part and parcel of investing, so I'm kind of immune to it for the last 2 years at least.
Yeah, and Yeah, I mean, if you haven't sold at this point, you got some diamond balls, man. That's all. That's
Right.
all I'm going to say right there. Because I mean, there was some moments that I got. Huh?
I've been averaging down crazily as well. So actually, I didn't catch the bottom. So my last entry price was actually 62, but it's the Hong Kong market, not the US market. So yeah, I mean, just some there's a difference. There is like a few dollar difference. I mean, it's quite close. So I think they usually trade in line, like I think around $1 or $2 difference. But I think Hong Kong tends to be higher. So if you were to translate it, I think in terms of US dollar, it's around 63, 64. So that was my last. Like really my last tranche. I was out of money then, and I was left with my underwear, if I can put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really tempted to keep buying because like when I saw it went down in the 60s, I was like, this is so stupid. Of course this is a good buy. But you know, at a certain point, like I can't let it grow into a huge part of my portfolio.
Right.
So now I'm kind of done. I mean, I have my average, it's roughly like 134, 135. Right. And I'm just gonna sit and wait.
Right.
But, I mean, even I personally think in the long run, that's a good price. That's a good
I think so too. I think for many people, a lot of people actually started like probably in the low 200s or high 100s, and then there were many people that trade out. So essentially, they maybe cut their losses before it actually tanked even more. But the bigger issue is if it went down like from value to deep value and they haven't been averaging down, then I guess I mean it's really dependent on how comfortable you are with the position, how you manage your risk, blah blah blah. But for me at least, I haven't really been very attentive to my allocation, and that's why Alibaba actually ballooned to such a huge part of my portfolio. But yeah, I'm comfortable. I sleep well at night. I mean, if the whole thing really blows up in my face, then okay. I mean, I'll admit defeat then if they nationalize the company.
I personally don't think it. You probably, in my opinion, I think you're gonna make a lot of money, but at the same time, that's just like I'm such a chicken crap. I'm always scared of like, there's too much money in one thing unless it's VT. Right. So, but I could definitely see you being a very rich man. That's why I'm nice to you. Now I want you to hook me up.
Greatly appreciate it.
Get rich, yeah. You're a Bob a millionaire. So I'm looking at some comments here. People have some questions for you. Let's see. Yeah, tell us. Do you know anything about taxes in Singapore? I heard Singapore is like a tax haven or something like that.
I wouldn't classify us as a tax haven, but we do have relatively lower taxes compared to many of our Western counterparts. I think personal tax rate is like under 20% unless you earn sky high amount. So it's a tiered tax system. So but I wouldn't compare us to like Bahamas or something where it's really a tax haven. But we are pretty business friendly, if I'm not wrong, based on my understanding of the country. So
what about
we actually encourage
stocks? Like
no, so for stock selling, we don't have a tax system on that. So capital gains are tax free. Yeah, and dividends are also tax free. So we don't tax on dividends as well.
What?
Yeah.
So you can get 100,000x return on Baba, and you can sell it. You don't pay any tax whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm sure you don't pay any taxes. But I think on the brokerage side, I think they do withhold a certain level of. If I'm not wrong, I think they do. It dependent on the brokers that you use. They do withhold, but I mean, at least in Singapore's context, like if you buy and sell Singapore stocks and you get dividends from Singapore companies, they're all not taxed.
Yeah, you're right. There's no capital gains tax in Singapore. Yeah, that's actually enormous because like what hurts a lot of people in their portfolios is taxation, especially in the United States. If you hold a stock for a year or less and you sell it at a gain, you pay your highest tax, your highest tax bracket. So you have to at least hold it for, a year and a day. And even then when you sell it, you're still going to pay tax on that gain, both at the federal government and your state, depending on if your state taxes income. So that can really reduce your returns massively. But if you're in Singapore and you can sell whatever you want, you don't pay tax, that's like amazing how much money you can make. I'm jealous.
Yeah, I think that's why also dividend investing is a very, very, very proclaimed investing style in Singapore. So we have a lot of like dividend investors that like invest in solely REITs. And I think REITs has came down by a large extent because of the interest rate environment. So before this whole hiking cycle, I think REITs actually promised around a 4 to 5%, and it's all tax free. So many people, let's say you have a $1 million portfolio, if you allocate it properly to maybe like 5 names, 10 names, they get a very steady income. And that's how people achieve like FIRE, financial independence, retire early, because it's a very steady flow of income from these different dividend yield companies. And many of these are like your blue chips. So they're probably not gonna, they own like big buildings and malls and whatever in Singapore. So they're not gonna go missing, or they're not gonna go bankrupt. And yeah, dividend investing is a very lucrative way, or a very lucrative strategy for many of the retired like people in Singapore. So that I guess it's the tax space that also encourage these sort of investing styles.
Yeah, that's why I'm critical of it here in the US, because I mean, y'all don't pay tax, but we do. And especially if it's like
Right.
a REIT, you're actually, it's a pass-through entity. I mean, the whole tax system here is freaking annoying, but basically you pay a higher tax rate on REIT dividends than you would on normal corporate dividends. But no matter what, you're paying taxes. And a lot of people here in the US are like, oh, dividends are great. And it's like, okay, dude, you're just paying taxes. I don't understand. But I could totally see, like, if it was completely tax-free, woo, baby, it makes it a lot more appealing.
Right.
So a little bit jealous there. Maybe I should move there. Would you?
You can retire. Yeah, you can retire over in Singapore. I think the government will gladly welcome you.
Would they? Do I have to like? How do I
We're
get
in search of talents?
pay like a certain amount of money or something?
No, I think it's a lot more in terms of integration. Like you have to come over. If you're working, it's best, and if you're a high income earner, it's even better. So like for yourself, I think if you're a CPA, if you're a professional, you can come over and get a visa first, work around and see how you like the place and whether we have the quota. Then you can apply for a conversion. But it's not guaranteed. But if I'm not wrong, if you are a relatively high earner and you can contribute to society in positive ways, like your YouTube videos, then I think you have a pretty high chance. I mean, I'm not promising, but yes.
Yeah, I'll definitely think about it when my kids are older. We'll see.
Right.
Right now, it'd be too much of a pain. So what do you think about this comment about Peter Zeihan's demographic collapse in China concerns?
Yeah, I watched Zeihan. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I watched Peter because the YouTube algo pushes his video on my feed on a quite frequent basis. Like I said, I think for many of these comments online, there is a certain grain of truth to it. I'm not gonna totally denounce. And not only him, I think many economies are kind of projecting outwards into the end of this century, like in 2300. China's population is going to cut by half, so to 600 million. I mean, many of these economies or people that make this sort of predictions and models, they've been predicting for God knows 40 years now. I mean, last 100 years, people are predicting this 100 years, and this 100 years, they're going to predict the next 100. I don't know how things are going to play out. To me, I'm an investor. I'm not long CCP. I'm not long China. I'm long a company. So a company operates in a bigger ecosystem. It's true. Yes, they operate in China. China has many problems and they have many set of issues. But as long as the company can continue outgrowing and the company can continue earning profits and they actually treat their shareholders well, I don't see an issue. I think there was this video that I forgot what was the channel. He was saying that China over-declared the GDP by 60%. I'm not too sure whether you have came across that video or not.
60%?
Yeah, 60%. So I can send you the link later. I can send it in the chat later. But I mean, sure. There are that. It's from an academic point of view. So I think it was one of the schools. I think was it Harvard or Cambridge or something that did such a study. So what they do was they kind of take satellite images and then they say that if your economy is really that it's that how do I put it, that developed, then your nightlife should be pretty well developed as well. So they started charting the GDP growth and they try to find a relationship, and then they say that based on the night activities, I think China's GDP was down or at least over declared by 60%. So to me, I think when I first saw that specific statistics, I was pretty shocked. I mean, I know that China's GDP is over declared, but 60%, I think it's a little bit. But over declaration of 60%, by the way. So it's not that it's over. It's not like it's 60% and it's declared. So it's, how do I put it? Yeah, it's crazily over declared. So then when I look at it, okay, it's a very important issue. But let's look at things that we can trust. So some of the things that we can trust includes like maybe Apple numbers. So Apple has a huge footprint in China. So Apple has crazy amount of sales in China as well. Then when I started charting out Apple's growth in the last 10, 15 years, you see it's astronomical. The demand for iPhones is astronomical. So you can tell me that on one hand, the GDP is over-declared by 60%, but Apple is able to grow their China sales by such a huge extent. I don't care. The people are rich enough, they're going to spend money, and me as an investor, I'm invested in a company. So if the company continues printing cash and it returns to shareholders, and shareholders' interests are being taken care of, they can over-declare their GDP by 99% for all I care, as long as the people continue spending money and there's growth and people are happy and companies benefit. That's my bottom line. So that's a different perspective, because from an academic point of view and from an investor's point of view. So that's that.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because like a lot of people, no matter what data is presented to them from China, they don't trust it at all. They think everything's 100% fake. It's all garbage. And I remember, the whole audit thing just happened where, I mean, you've been tracking that story too, where the SEC just made their announcement. Hey, we looked at the work papers of the audit firms, and we found some errors, but they're not like anything egregious. We've seen those in other, countries and places that we've audited before for the first time. It seemed like a pretty positive development. There wasn't anything crazy that they detected.
Right.
And I made a video about it, and then people were commenting like, hey, everything could have been faked. All the work papers were fake. Everything's fake. It's like, dude, I mean, like U.S. auditors from the PCAOB literally went to Hong Kong, looked at the work papers of the public accounting firms, and didn't say this was a massive fraud. And you're still saying you don't trust anything out of China? So it gets to the point of ludicrousness. I mean, like I totally get it. Yeah, I'm sure they're fluffing up some numbers that come out of China, 100%. But you got to draw the line and say, is it all fake, or is there some legitimacy behind some of the numbers? And I think now, after that, the PCAOB's audit, I don't know, seems to be more reassuring to me, more bullish at least.
Right. I think that's the biggest issue, because when you add in this, in Chinese we call it 水分. So I think in English, if I do a direct translation, it's more of like, how do I put it? If I do a direct translation, it's called water substance. So it's like, if you have like a balloon and then you pump water in and then you try to make it more plump, or make the numbers look a little bit better. So it feels like there is a certain element of that. And when you put in that level of uncertainty, investors get uncomfortable, because who knows, like let's say you declare that you have 70 billion on your books, you have 70 billion in the bank of cash and cash equivalent. How much of the 70 billion is real? Like which part of it will be clawed back by your suppliers or whatever? I don't know what kind of accounting magic trick they're going to do. But if that 70 billion is not really 70 billion, how can we even trust their book value if we say that they're trading at 1 times book value? Maybe it's 2 times, 3 times, because it's over declared by 2 times or 3 times. So that's still an issue. And I think largely speaking, I'm also bullish on the PCAOB recent report. It does seem like they provided a very neutral stance. In fact, they are more inclined towards the more bullish side, saying that, hey, we kind of find a way out on trying to get a consensus amongst the Chinese authorities and them. So I also look forward to the developments over there.
Yeah, we're definitely not out of hot water, because they said part of the message that the SEC put out was, hey, China has to continue to comply. We have this one good event, but that doesn't mean that if they obstruct us in the future, there's going to be problems. But it's a massive development. I mean, the Chinese authorities let a U.S. government entity come in and actually tear apart the work papers and look at some of their companies. So in the long run, I think the market didn't really react to it that much. But in my opinion, I think that's a pretty bullish signal. It may take months or years to play out. But if you can trust the numbers, or at least somewhat trust the numbers, it seems like that's a positive development that's eventually going to play out positively at some point in the future.
I mean, I'm a Baba Boo, so I do agree. So there's not much to disagree here, unless I'm a bear. But yeah.
Oh, actually, you know what? I do have a question for you. Do you have a target price for Baba? Is there a price you would sell Baba at, or are you just like a long-term investor?
So that's the issue. I think this long-term investor label is a little bit dangerous. So a lot of people like to say that, oh, I'm a long-term investor. I don't sell. I'm like Warren Buffett. I'll hold Coke to the end of my life. And I think there was this remark saying that he spent $100 million to buy his first Coke position, and today, in 1 year, Coke actually gives him like $100 million in dividends. So I think I'm more cautious in trying to use these sort of labels. It's true that I like to hunt or I try to hunt for bargains in the stock market. I like to see where's mispriced and why. Actually, fun fact, I think because of Tesla's recent movement, right? Because of the Twitter, Elon Musk, whatever. I'm actually trying to expand my understanding in the space to see that at what price would Tesla be a buy. So I'm actually company agnostic. I don't care what company or what country it is, or whether is it the most hyped stock out there, because I believe that there is a price for probably everything in the world. But you just have to kind of determine that what is the correct price and whether you are able to estimate the value properly. So for companies like Intel is kind of in a very huge transition phase. I'm not sure whether they're able to tide through this whole thing, but it's a very popular stock in the value investing community. But I'm not interested in touching Intel because I really can't understand the uncertainty around it. So that's why I also really can't classify myself as like a growth investor. Are you a value investor? Are you a whatever investor? Then back to the question on whether I have a target price, I kind of do. So at least for content purposes, I have to create like fanciful Excel and I have to tell my viewers that, hey, this is how I'm looking at the next 5 years or 10 years for Alibaba. But personally, I think things have to be taken into context. So there are actually too many moving parts in the whole equation, right? So now the Chinese economy is slowing down, and then you look at Alibaba, it's slowing down. The revenue growth is like 0% or like negative 0.1. And then when I contrast it to like the other big tech companies, even Tencent is also experiencing slowdown. But actually, Alibaba's competitors are experiencing pretty interesting growth. So like Pinduoduo is up like 50-60%. So then, but then you have to keep at the back of your head that what's the context of China today. Pinduoduo in this case, because it targets the much lower echelons of society, they do a lot of groceries, a lot of all this cheap buying, group buying, and that is why because the country or the economy is in a turmoil now, people will want to use that platform more than, for example, JD or Alibaba. So then now you ask me to estimate, hey, at what price would you sell Alibaba? I can't give you a correct answer. I can't give you a very precise target. But all I can say is this: when I have my own price target in mind, and when I think that it's kind of overvalued, or if it suddenly bounces up to like, I don't know, if Alibaba trades at like $300 or $400, I might take profit. But I probably, if I still think that there is a lot of room for it to grow, and I still am very hopeful and optimistic of its future, I will still hold a position. But I don't think I will like, oh, okay, I went all in and then I'm going to hold this stock until 2050 or something and just die together with Jack Ma. I think that's at least not how I look at investing for now.
Yeah, but that makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely situation dependent because, like the price could skyrocket, but if the fundamentals justify that skyrocketing price,
right,
and it's still not overvalued at that price, so sure, you can hold on to it. I mean, for me personally, I'm thinking about holding it for a long time, but like you said, if the stock runs up to $300 in the next year, honestly, I'd probably liquidate my whole position.
Right.
Because I'm not really an individual stock investor, but yeah, I guess you kind of have to just wait and see. Like it really is situation dependent.
I think even on this topic, right? I think Munger was recently quizzed on, I've forgotten by who, asking him, hey, do you think that Costco is expensive? I think at that time, Costco was trading at like high 20 or 30 PE. And Munger's response was, yes, it's expensive. And he probably don't recommend people buying into Costco, even though he loved Costco as a company. But that said, I think he did say that if your time horizon is like 10, 20 or in the decades, he said that even buying Costco at such valuations probably won't do you too badly as an investment vehicle. So it really depends on like how do you see this investment and do you really like love the company, or are you here for a recovery play or a growth play, how things are executing and whatever. And I think it's very different from different investors, and I can only say it's your own decision, your brokerage account, and you click the buy and sell button. So don't be swayed by, oh, just because Keng or Strongman is holding Alibaba till 2050 and then I'm gonna hold together with him. I think that's a pretty bad decision framework if I were to put it that way.
Yeah, and I have to constantly reiterate to people, it's like, okay, yeah, for me, it's more of a reopening. It's more of a play. Like, I'm not in love with Alibaba. I don't think it's like the greatest company in the world. Jack Ma is my hero, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But I do think I can make a lot of money off of it. But I have to constantly reiterate to people, it's like, okay, it's still a small part of my portfolio. Because what happens on YouTube is people will see you talking about a stock and they won't really understand the context. For me, it's speculative play. And they'll be like, well, maybe I'll put some money in Baba too. Strongman likes it, but they put like way more of their portfolio in it. And then they get all butthurt when the stock goes down. So it's like a constant battle to remind people, that, hey, at the end of the day, it really is your investment decision. And when you buy something, you really have to be comfortable with it going down massively, which
Totally
happened with
agree.
Alibaba. All right. Any last questions? I think we're kind of getting towards the end here. I got to have some breakfast. I got a live stream at 10 o'clock too. I'm a busy boy.
Yeah, I saw schedule. I'll tune in later too.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I do, man. I'm just pumping out videos left and right. You got any last comments? Anything you want to say about Baba or talk about your channel?
Not really. I mean, I would shamelessly plug my channel. So for those of you who don't know, I cover a little bit more about Baba. I mean more in depth, and I do talk about a little bit some other companies as well. So I think I talk about Tencent. I talk about like Chinese banks and stuff like that. But I mean, trust me, I'm not a CCP communist spy or anything. I mean,
Sure?
I do try to find value in the market, and I do happen to find more value in the Chinese market. That's why my portfolio is tilted towards a country. So that's that. And yes, I do like Saga's video. So he pumps very objective video, but I did do a few reaction videos to his video to try to complete the picture, because sometimes our own research might be not as complete. So that's all I'll say.
You guys should have a debate.
Right.
A live debate. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I enjoy your channel. Hopefully you enjoy mine, besides, even though I'm a raving maniac sometimes, but it's been fun.
I love the entertainment value, and I've been a great supporter. I mean, I haven't been commenting much, but I've been clicking on the like button. So for those of you who are still here, remember to smash the like button on the way out.
Yeah. I never tell people to do that. I should probably do that more.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. I'm doing a live stream in an hour and 15 minutes. I know you're probably getting tired, so you have a wonderful night.
Okay, thanks.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Cheers.